Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, the first ever podcast designed to showcase Canadian thought leadership. These innovators share industry insights, entrepreneurial best practices, lessons learned, and other tips that we can incorporate right into our lives, our careers, and our businesses. So let's get inspired. We're really lucky today. We've got both Philip Parker and Jeremy Mullen, who are both part of Coral Health out here in Canada. Philip Parker is a data scientist with expertise leveraging diverse data assets to guide operations and marketing strategy. After graduating from Harvard University, Philip consulted for Fortune 500 pharmaceutical clients at the Analysis Group, where he led health economics and effectiveness projects across a range of treatments. Then he decided that he was going to drive right into the financial and clinical performance of the health systems at Athena Health, a top U.S. electronic medical record and revenue cycle management company. Philip's previous projects have also included partnerships with public health agencies, national foundations, and top academics. And then we also have Jeremy Mullen, who is also a strategist and a data expert, who has spent his entire career advising Fortune 1000 enterprises on data aggregation and strategy. Previous to Coral Health, he served as the director at Research Now, the global leader in digital data collection. Currently is the board of director for the Toronto chapter of the Marketing Research and Intelligence Association and is a member of the Data Science Association. Jeremy leads Coral Health's corporate development strategy and partnership development. Welcome. And I forgot to mention, Philip, you're the COO at Coral Health. So we've got really two of the big guys at Coral Health with us. Did I miss anything in that intro?
I think you got it, Sapna. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Sapna.
I'm more excited because I think what you guys are doing is awesome. It's beyond belief. So let's get right to it. What exactly is Coral Health?
Yeah, so Coral Health is a healthcare blockchain entity. So we're basically building solutions that leverage blockchain technology in order to increase primarily data exchange within the healthcare industry. So the healthcare industry, particularly in the US, but also in Canada, has been plagued by what's called lack of data interoperability or lack of data exchange. So there's many different entities in the healthcare space, and they all have, a large amount of sensitive information within their centralized databases, oftentimes not encrypted. And so, the driving impetus behind Coral Health is that, we've noticed that, and it's a not a secret whatsoever in the industry, but patients and doctors are spending a lot of time and dealing with frustration in terms of getting access to the best care possible. And a lot of it stems from the fact that they can't share their information easily throughout the system. And so with the advent of blockchain in the last couple of years, we realized that this would be a perfect opportunity to finally tackle some of these pervasive issues in healthcare that are basically impeding, progress in what's called personalized medicine. So that's the idea of by leveraging, a patient's healthcare data and their medical records, you're able to give them customer tailored treatment at the point of care rather than sort of a one size fits all, healthcare delivery system that currently exists presently today. So we're really passionate. We see Coral Health is helping to encourage, taking what's essentially a vicious cycle, presently with doctors spending an inordinate amount of time having to, do paperwork, patients waiting and not knowing whether they're going to get insurance coverage, as an example, for drug therapy or surgical procedure. And then also the healthcare insurance companies, spending millions and millions of dollars, operationally trying to keep ahead of claims processing. And we're basically moving this towards a virtuous circle where, we're going to save doctors time. We're going to put patients more in control of their data and speed up delivery of healthcare for them. And also drive down operational costs for healthcare players in the space.
That is
so that's
amazing.
Kind of Coral Health in a nutshell.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I love that you're going to save people time, give them more care, bespoke care, and they have more control over their data, and it gets to decrease the cost because, especially in Canada, our healthcare is, well, I'm going to put this in quotes, air quotes, obviously, free. It's all subsidized and everything else. So, this is a huge issue.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really a global issue. It's a massive issue in Canada. It's a large issue in the US as well, and in Europe too. So it's really this lack of access to your own information is really crippling pretty much every healthcare system.
Now,
yeah, to give you an example of the scope, in the US last year, it's been quantified as $1.3 trillion worth of wastage in the healthcare system. And a big chunk of that is related to issues between sharing data and so forth. And that's not to mention the risk of recent data breaches that you see almost on a monthly basis, which is due to people, using the sort of the dated model of storing data in centralized databases in an unencrypted fashion when we could be storing it encrypted on a blockchain instead.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of blockchain. Huge fan. As you know, I was just mentioning to you guys, I'm getting certified because I just find it so fascinating. I know that everyone talks about cryptocurrency, but the operational effectiveness that the technology allows us to be able to utilize in terms of security and safety, that is really, really amazing. So when you mentioned that patients are going to have more control over their data, do they get to actually decide who gets to see what?
Yeah, so that's exactly our design. Essentially, we've created a patient app where when they go and visit their doctor, the doctor sends their results directly to their phone, and then it's fully encrypted, and the patient's the only one with the key, which lives on their phone, to actually view that information. So if anyone else hacks into their data, they're not able to view it. It's only the patient that has access to it. But then they're able to securely share that access with anyone that they want, say their family doctor or their emergency contact. So it's secure by default, but it's also very flexible and really easy to share that information as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. So I'll never need to remember what happened to my lower hip the one day. It'll all be there at my fingertips.
Exactly. And that's like the major innovation of the blockchain. Like it's not just the security, but now we can go from a system where all these little copies of your data are passed around from, say, one doctor to another doctor, and they're always treating you with outdated information. They're never able to see the full picture of you as a person. And what we're doing is creating that personal health record, putting the patient in control of that, and allowing them to decide who to share the information with.
That's amazing.
Exactly. And just to add to Philip's point, I mean, it's what really should not be lost is the impact, the societal impact that it can bring. To give you an idea, 30% of patients in the U.S. who try to share their health records at the point of care in the emergency room still are receiving treatment without the doctor being able to access that information. So basically, the doctor is treating them in basically a blind way. Whereas we could, if we operationalize the sharing between patient and doctor, then there will never be a situation where the doctor can't look at your data and be able to provide intelligent, informed, bespoke, as you mentioned, healthcare delivery to the patient. So huge opportunity.
It's amazing. Well, actually, especially after you just mentioned that number of $1.3 trillion of wastage in healthcare. That the cost itself, doctors being blind, not being able to know what's actually happening. So if you go into an emergency, they don't get a full picture of all the other pieces that us patients may not seem as relevant, but really is relevant, that they may need to see the whole story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really quite tragic in the sense that there are literally hundreds of people dying a year from adverse drug reactions that could be caught simply if a doctor would always, without fail, had access to their information before they treated them, right? But it's just not possible in the current situation. So, I mean, aside from the huge, market opportunity, I think the bigger thing is the fact that we can improve healthcare outcomes through blockchain technology, which is a huge win for us.
It is. So how did you guys come up with the name Coral Health, out of curiosity?
Yeah, so it's actually a play on kind of precision medicine or personalized medicine. So essentially, personalized medicine is really about, using the genetics and all the different data about the patient to really tailor and customize the treatment to each individual patient. And so what we're able to do, kind of where the name came about, was just sort of a play on that, where under a microscope, coral looks like DNA strands. So it's really a play on kind of the move in medicine towards using genomics to inform treatment. So that was kind of the the little joke behind the name, essentially.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Well, when I heard of the name Coral Health, I kept thinking colorful, like almost like a vacation, like it's, very safe and, serene. That's how I was visioning it. So this is
A
great.
vacation from all the hassle of dealing with the healthcare system, trying to track down your data.
Well, they haven't been, they haven't actually, revolutionized or actually innovated in God knows how many years, right? So yeah, it's definitely a breath of fresh air. So how did this all come about? Like, did you both know each other from before, or how did this all come about that you guys joined together to create this Coral Health?
Yeah, so it all started. So our CEO, Andrew Park, is a mutual friend of ours. I actually used to work with Andrew at a healthcare consultancy company going back a number of years when we were fresh out of undergrad. And so we've always stayed in touch. And I'm relocated from Vancouver, where we worked together, to Toronto, and I joined Research Now and stayed involved with healthcare through that role. Whereas Andrew went and started his own healthcare technology company, which he scaled over a number of years up to about, I think, 50 people full time, and exited about a year ago at about a $30 million valuation. And so Philip was also connected to Andrew because Andrew happened to go to high school in the Boston area and knew Philip's older brother. And so when he came up with the idea to, bring these two ideas together, that is personalized medicine and genomic testing with blockchain technology, he immediately reached out to the two of us, who are obviously highly interested in the project and saw the potential right away.
That's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. I love this. So this must have been quite the challenge to kind of get this off the ground, since you guys are so focused on the healthcare industry.
We really just, we weren't sure what the adoption would be like, but the timing couldn't be better. A year ago, year and a half ago, there just wasn't that much awareness about the blockchain. But now there's been, a complete sea change where tons of organizations are curious about, how can the blockchain help me? So I think we got pretty fortunate just in terms of the timing for our company. We saw the potential, and then now the healthcare system starting to see the potential. And the big challenge for us is just, pretty much figuring out what are the exact use cases that we can implement kind of on day one, rather than trying to build this whole, big system from the top up. Really just kind of deciding, all right, what are the immediate use cases as we talk to these different healthcare entities that we can implement immediately? And kind of what are the healthcare entities that, are willing to partner with small startups? But it's been really encouraging in terms of the amount of adoption we've already had. So we've already signed multiple pilot agreements. And that just really helps us, be one of the first companies that's actually implementing blockchain solutions in healthcare.
No, it's amazing. I can only imagine how many requirements you get, because I'm guessing everyone has a bunch of different things on their wish list, and trying to prioritize them. I can see that being quite the challenge.
Yeah, and it's a lot of just education. People think the blockchain can solve all of their problems, and we're here, explaining this is, how it fits into your workflow, and these are the exact problems it can solve, and these are some other problems that blockchain's not well suited for. So it's really kind of educational just talking to each of these different health systems.
I love it. So, so you mentioned that you've signed a couple of pilots. So will it be something that they're going to do internal, or is it something that consumers will be also part of that pilot?
Yeah, both actually. So we've got a few partnerships already, pilot partnerships already signed, as we mentioned. One of them is with Fraser Health in British Columbia. Another is with Principal Health Systems in Houston. And we're very excited. We just signed a new one with the BC Centre of Disease Control as well. So very, very visible, reputable organizations that we're working with, that we're very fortunate to have a pilot opportunity with. And so, for example, with the Principal Health Systems in Houston, which is basically a hospital chain with labs and so forth, and about 500 physicians involved, we're basically going to build a solution that provides them, more, like easier access between the exchange between the patient and their systems. And so actually both will be involved. So consumers, in the sense that the patients, that the patient base of Principal Health will be involved in, as well as the hospital's chains themselves, right? And so what we're doing is, they have a problem with when patients are given care at the hospital and they need to submit claims on their behalf. There's a real backlog due to essentially manual evaluation and manual submission involved. And we're basically working to, our goal is essentially automate that process and make something that takes doctors and people on the insurance payer sides several hours to basically go through the channels and get it approved, which actually can take several weeks, down to something that's essentially instantaneous as you automate it.
No, it's amazing, because all I can see is win, win, win from so many different angles. So I am so excited for this, like really, truly excited, but I can't wait. If you need someone else, well, too bad I'm not part of BC, or when you guys get here into Toronto, let me know. I'd be happy to be part of your pilot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're openly, we've got a ton of interest from a lot of different parties. We would love to work with more Canadian institutions, ones in Toronto. About half of our team is actually based here in Toronto. So we've got so many pilots on our plate now that we're basically pretty much at capacity at this point, but we're definitely, in the future looking to do more and more with more entities, for sure.
Well, I can imagine you're going to have so many requests on demand. That's for sure, because it's really, really great. So besides the health aspect of it, what else excites you guys most about this industry?
What most excites me about healthcare, I mean, I think it's like almost the untapped frontier when you think about it, like just how inefficient the system currently is and where we can get it to. Like, it's you see now with like Amazon and Apple all announcing that they're, entering healthcare and they're going to do big healthcare moves. But like, essentially, it's really one of the last kind of industries that hasn't really innovated. So it's an amazing time to really be at the forefront, and the blockchain really gives us a great opening, because before there wasn't really a lot of kind of excitement around any new technology, but now that the healthcare industry is really excited about the blockchain, it's a great time to not just implement the blockchain, but upgrade the entire system and bring it into the 21st century. So it's just an amazing time where we can finally overcome all this fatigue. There's been a lot of like fatigue that I've noticed in the healthcare industry, where people thought that, say, electronic medical records would solve it, or that value-based care would solve the issues in the US. But now people are they're finally excited again about a new technology, and one that, can actually deliver this time.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. This is fantastic. You both have such an interesting background. You guys are both fascinating by nature. So is there a lesson learned that you guys could actually share with us and the listeners, or something that you wish someone had told you?
I think that, I wish, if it's still obviously very, very a nascent technology, but I wish I had, I kind of heard about blockchain probably over a year and a half ago, but I didn't really take a close look at it until probably like a little less than a year ago. And I guess the lesson for me is it's such a fascinating industry with so much potential, that I wish that I would have taken a closer look, that somebody would have said, hey, you really got to, do some of your own research here, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I first heard of about the technology. I mean, the biggest thing about the, blockchain is that you hear that the news cycles are pretty much dominated by, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. But what I think that the media could do a little bit better job delineating is that is just, the cryptocurrency is essentially just scratching the surface of what the underlying technology is capable of. So to give you an example, to me, it's like the internet starting up. And I'm not the first one to say this. There have been other people. I think Don Tapscott is one of them, who said this is going to be like the second coming of the internet. And I absolutely believe him. And it's so basically, to me, it's like when the internet started, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is like being able to send email. And that's fantastic and phenomenal. But think of like all the other things that have flowed after the ability to send email. And that's kind of what I think blockchain technology, the potential that it holds, just to do so much more. We're just basically scratching the surface, essentially.
No, I agree. I think that's one aspect is that people, you're right. The media has been focusing so much on the cryptocurrency part of it that they have kind of missed out on the fact about the technology, that it creates so many different types of functionalities that never we had at our fingertips before. I think you're right about that. That's amazing. That is fantastic.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think like a big lesson we've learned is like, you know, in this new phase, there's also a fair amount of kind of hype, and it's really important to not get like deterred by someone else saying that they're, you know, doing a healthcare blockchain solution. Because as we found, you know, as you kind of meet with these different organizations, the large payers in the US, these big hospital chains, you know, some people are talking about using the blockchain, but you really have to actually, you know, you have to talk directly to them to see, you know, where are they? Is anything near production ready? And so don't get like discouraged when you just hear these big players saying that they're doing something in the space. Really dive in and see like, you know, there's still lots of opportunities in this space for startups. And that's not true in a lot of other sectors. So it's really a great time for startups to get involved in the space.
Very nice. I love that. So in this journey, was there any kind of tools or resources you're kind of able to leverage from either maybe the government or these innovation hubs or startup nations or any of those things, or wish that you had you were able to leverage?
You know, for the most part, I think we've pretty much bootstrapped everything ourselves and relied on our experience and our own personal connections. You know, Philip, as mentioned, you know, was at Athena Health, and Andrew and I have worked with, you know, Fortune 500 healthcare medical device companies as well as pharma companies for many, many years now, about 10 years a piece. So we have about 25 years plus combined experience on the team. So we pretty much relied on that. But, you know, always things like, you know, better access to, you know, people in healthcare, decision makers in healthcare, people looking to really, you know, advance sort of thought leaders in the industry. If there was more sort of forums that, you know, like in Canada and the US that really, you know, were open to working with or helping to guide young startups, I think that would be very helpful. Access to capital. We've been fortunate to be able to raise everything to date via, you know, privately, but, you know, we would love to see, not just for our own benefit, but other healthcare blockchain companies get better access to funding and so forth, because it's out of all the industries that you can think of that blockchain is disrupting, you know, financial, supply chain, et cetera. We happen to believe that healthcare by far needs it more than any other industry, mostly because, as Philip mentioned, not only has there been, you know, sluggish innovation and a lack of ability to overcome like this intractable lack of data exchange, but the bigger, you know, societal sort of impact in that, you know, healthcare is running suboptimally in terms of patients getting the best possible care that they could, and governments are spending way more than they potentially need to, and it's just such a big problem that affects so many people that we think that, you know, there needs to be more people like us trying to do big things in the industry. And so any sort of incubators or, you know, access to funding or mentorship would be a big help.
Really nice. So can you guys share maybe a sales or a marketing tip that's worked for you guys? Or
I think a big thing here with the blockchain is just trying to keep it simple. You know, don't let people, if you just come in and say we have blockchain solutions, people get confused. It's really about breaking it down to what are the benefits to each of these institutions. So, you know, for a hospital, the big benefit there is security and giving patients access to their data. So we don't even talk that much about the fact it's blockchain based. We more, you know, pitch it as this is much more secure. And by the way, it's way more efficient than faxing information. And the fax is still alive and unfortunately well in healthcare. You know, it's the primary means of communication. So we just try to pitch this more as a fax killer. and less of a blockchain solution.
Oh, I love that. The fax killer. I think you're going to put a couple of companies out of business if they're not already out of business.
Well, it's high time. It's high time.
It's totally high time. Every time someone asks me for my fax number, I'm like, what? Really? Yeah. I love it. The fax killer. Is there any other advice you give to our aspiring or budding innovators out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there, there's so much opportunity out there. You just got to, put some thought into a business problem, ask around, people that you work with, clients in particular are good. Ask them about potential problems or pain points that they have. And then just try to think a little, try to develop a solution, and then, go and see and talk to people and go and see if there's interest, and try to validate it in the marketplace. And then if you do get positive feedback, I mean, go for it. As it pertains narrowly to blockchain, I would say there is a lot of hype in the industry. There are a lot of people that, because of that hype, are starting blockchain companies and with not a very clear revenue model or business model underlying it. And so unfortunately that's given the industry at times a bit of a bad reputation. So I would say first, going back to what Phil just mentioned, absolutely, first of all, think of the business model. Is there an actual business model there, and are you actually solving a need? And then B, does blockchain actually need to be involved at all? Now, a lot of use cases, there's no need for blockchain, or blockchain is actually a bad fit. So start with the business model first, and then work backward and say, is this a good fit for blockchain? There are, instances in healthcare and as it pertains to, personalized medicine that we're pursuing that absolutely are like a beautiful, perfect fit. But there are a lot of companies out there that we're seeing too that are like, you're kind of scratching your head saying, okay, so who pays for this? Is it desirable? Is it viable? And is it feasible? And then fourthly, is anybody going to pay? And if nobody is, then you're going to be in a pretty tough spot trying to get it off the ground, right?
No, that's great advice. That is great advice. And do you guys, either of you have a kind of a key business philosophy or a favorite quote, something that kind of keeps you focused or helps you create that clarity moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's around, keeping in mind that just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean you can't do it better than them. As we've been saying, there's lots of companies out there saying they're going to use the blockchain to fix healthcare. And it's really about, for me, not letting that, distract us. We're at the very forefront of this. And if we can just develop faster, even if there's other competitors out there, we can get first to market. And so I think it's important to kind of almost put those blinders on and, develop full steam ahead when you see the big opportunity in the wide open road ahead.
I love that. Focus. Focus is always the big thing, right? It's very hard to focus in this crowded world, right?
Yeah. And I would add to that too. I come from, consulting and market research background. And I would say, definitely talk to your clients and make sure that if you have an idea, really validate it before you put a ton of time into really building it out. Because I see, a lot of different, we've seen in healthcare in particular a lot where, people come along and they build a great piece of tech and they think that people are automatically going to adopt it and then it doesn't, it falls short of expectations. And it's kind of like, okay, well, you got to do the research up front. You got to validate that it's something that's needed and that people are going to want and people are going to subscribe to, right? So that's one of the key things that drives Coral Health is we're not, deluding ourselves in the sense that we're building patient apps, but we're not expecting, patients to rush out and want to pull for our applications right from the get-go, because so many companies have failed under that assumption that patients aren't going to run out there and sign up for your app right away unless there's a real meaningful reason to do so. And so we're actually working with the organizations and getting them to basically start to encourage their customer base or their patient base to use our app and show them the benefits. So we're going in a bit of a different route, and we believe that it'll be a lot more successful as a result.
Love that. I really love that. I find you guys very, very fascinating. That's for sure. So I know you guys don't get a lot of downtime because you guys have your fingers in multiple buckets. Is there something that you are currently reading or listening to, or something that really resonates with you in terms of a book or a podcast or, a speaker?
Yeah, I think if you want to understand, the biggest issues in healthcare right now, a really good podcast is called Decoding Healthcare. It was actually made by Athena last year, but it just dives like deep and also in a fun way into the most kind of the hottest topics in healthcare right now. And each episode includes interviews with, say, like a hospital executive. So you really get not just the hype, but also like the concrete experience to see, all right, value-based care, what's the potential and how is the industry actually responding to it? So I found Decoding Healthcare to be really useful.
Nice.
Yeah, and for myself, I mean, as far as being another interesting thing that I really enjoy outside of healthcare is actually a Canadian by the name of, well, she's actually American, but she lives here in Canada and teaches at the Rotman School of Management, where I'm actually doing a part-time MBA in innovation and entrepreneurship. And her name is Anita McGagan, and she teaches strategy there. And I recently took her course, and she's just absolutely phenomenal. You can look her up and find her work on YouTube and published work as well. And I think she does an absolutely fabulous job of distilling strategy down into really digestible and accessible pieces, essentially. And she's got fascinating anecdotes of she went to Harvard Business School a number of years ago and was actually Michael Porter's student. And she talks about some of her classmates that are now CEO of Merrill Lynch and big high places, and just a really fascinating perspective. And I encourage anybody to take a look at some of her work. Anita McKagan at Rotman School of Management.
Excellent. I will definitely put that in the show notes. That's for sure. So do you guys have some sort of personal habit that kind of helps you stay productive?
For me, it's really like when you're working at a startup, you're kind of constantly working. So for me, a habit that's, helped just like, keep me productive is just always going on a run in the afternoon, because it just helps me, clear my head, reprioritize. And then instead of having this long, constant day, you're able to break it up, get that kind of energy out, and then recharge and reprioritize in the afternoon.
Nice. I like that. So we have a lot of international listeners out there. So is there a favorite kind of Canadian restaurant hotspot, festival, anything that you like to recommend out there to our international listeners besides pot, of course?
Yeah, I mean, Toronto's a fabulous city. I'm actually here in Toronto, and I've lived here for 6 years. It's just a phenomenal mix of culture and different backgrounds and food and really, I tell anybody, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot, and I say there's no better city that I would rather live than Toronto. Is in terms of some favorite spots, one of my there's a number of great food places, but when I really get the craving to go for a burger with my buddy, we always go to Burger Priest. And I can't recommend it highly enough. If you like sort of like an old school, diner style burger, it's a great one to pick for sure.
Very nice. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. And finally, guys, how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, so you can check out our website at mycoralhealth.com. So that has the information about our whole team, it has our white paper, and then reach out to us on Twitter as well. My handle's Philip with 1L_G_Parker.
Excellent. That is fantastic. Well, guys, you've been an absolute joy to have as always. I love learning about blockchain, and especially in the healthcare system. So you're the first area you guys are the first podcast I actually have ever focused on healthcare. So I'm pretty excited about that. So thank you guys so much for your time.
Oh, wow.
Thanks
we're honored. Thanks so much.
Thanks again for joining us this week. It's been a blast as usual. Next week, we've got a really interesting guest. Here's a quick sneak peek.
Her reaction was a big shock to me at the time, but it's not anymore. And that was, well, I don't know how to tell my treating neurologist. And so I realized after I got over the shock of it all, I realized she was very concerned about the fact that she could offend her physician and that he would basically fire her as a patient. and that she would be left alone again. And alone was worse than with a physician, but inadequate care.
Thanks everyone for joining in and tuning in this week. Next week, we got another really cool episode. I hope you enjoyed the sneak peek. I'm going to try to do this and see how this works. If you guys are interested, like the little sneak teasers, let me know. I'd love to hear back from all of you. And don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. And let me know if you know of another Canadian innovator that's doing something really cool around the world. Let's get them showcased. Or if there's an innovation trend that you would like to specifically focus on. Anyways, looking forward to hearing from all of you and talk to you next week. Cheers.